everyone, or good day to those of you who are joining us from other time zones. And thank you for joining us today. Everyone is most welcome for the workshop on what every new reviewer should know about peer review. My name is Linda Vick. I'm the Managing Editor of the South African Journal of Science. You are very welcome. Thank you to those who have started doing so already, to introduce yourselves in the chat. Tell us where you're from, whether you've peer reviewed before, or what you hope to learn from today's workshop. Please note, we do have a large number of participants expected, so we are live streaming on YouTube. My colleagues Pumlani and Louise are monitoring the chat on YouTube, so if you are joining us via YouTube, we will be able to see your questions posted on the YouTube chat, so please do ask questions there. For those of us joining on Zoom, please post all your questions for the panel in the Q&A, not in the chat. We will not see them in the chat, so please post them in the Q&A. This webinar is being recorded. Remember to push record, it is being recorded. And we will share the slides and the recording with all registrants after the workshop. So that brings us to the start of our workshop. And in September, every year, we celebrate Peer Review Week. And it's a time to remember and recognize the importance of peer review in scholarly publications. The theme for this year was the use of tools and technology. So that is something we're going to elaborate on in today's workshop, but we're also going to start with the basics, and that is where every new reviewer should start. So I have the great privilege of introducing our speakers for today, and Professor Leslie Swartz, who you can just see on the screen, is the Editor-in-Chief of the South African Journal of Science and also of the Scandinavian Journal of Disability. He is a professor of psychology at Stellenbosch University. His research focuses on disability rights and mental health issues in Southern Africa. And he has a particular interest in developing academic writing skills and in increasing access to academic publishing. So Leslie, you are welcome, and thank you for presenting in today's workshop. Our second speaker is Susanne Veldsman. She is the Director of the Scholarly Publishing Unit at the Academy of Science of South Africa, and is responsible for driving the open science agenda to raise the visibility, discoverability, and accessibility of South African scholarly journals, and to improve the quality of South African research output, and support the development of policy frameworks in order to facilitate optimal use and access to publicly funded research. She received the Electronic Publishing Trust Award for her outstanding contribution to the promotion of open access in developing countries. And she was recently the co-chair of the IAP report on combating predatory journals and conferences, which was launched in 2022. And she has presented previously in a workshop on that, so you can check out our previous workshops on our YouTube channel as well for more on that. Our third presenter, so welcome, Susanne, and thank you for presenting today's workshop. Our third presenter, who you can also see, is Nadia Grobler. She is the Online Publishing Systems Administrator for the South African Journal of Science. She studied information science at the University of Pretoria, and her area of expertise is in scholarly publishing systems, tools, and services. And that's why she's joining us today to tell us all about how we can use tools and services as a new reviewer. So I'm very, very grateful that they have given their time today to share their expertise on this topic. And please, I'm sure you have lots of questions. Put them in the Q&A. We do have a Q&A session at the end to cover any questions that aren't dealt with within the time frame. So please keep them coming and we will get to them. And yes, welcome again to all our participants. And over to you, Leslie. Oh, sorry, not over to Leslie. Before Leslie starts, well, I'm not sure, Leslie. I know I need to share something. I'm not sure if you want to introduce it. Okay.
No, Linda, you can introduce it.
Before Leslie starts, we wanted to get some information from our participants. So please bear with me. I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, just trying to remember in which order to do these things. There's too many things going on here. So the question, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to please share the link in the chat, is what are your biggest concerns about becoming a peer reviewer? So please click on the link that has been shared in the chat and type in just 3 words about your concerns about becoming a peer reviewer so we can get a general idea from our audience today. And people in the YouTube, people joining via YouTube can also do this.
Yeah.
So we have
I think there's so many.
spot.
Oh, great. Thank you, Nadia. I was going to say, send the link again because people are saying hello still. It's a Mentimeter from Nadia. Yeah.
Yes. Full responses. So we are currently about 260 participants. So we've got a long way to go to hear from everyone, but they are coming in quite quickly. Changing quite fast. So for those of you who haven't seen a Mentimeter word cloud before, it's like any other word cloud. The bigger the word, the more it has been, the more it has been chosen. So I think we'll just give it a few minutes because the responses are still coming in quite quickly.
Sure. Linda, are you able to share the screen? At the moment we can see like your background. Is there a way that it can be a bit bigger? Is that possible, if you see what I mean? As though you were sharing a PowerPoint. It doesn't matter. It's quite small now. Now as we get more.
I'm sorry, Leslie, that might be a bit beyond my expertise.
Look, I mean, as you know, I can't do this at all. So
I would have to,
matter.
I think, stop sharing and then reshare.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I don't know how to control the housing.
No, it's just. I'm just trying to make sure that.
This is the presenter. Yeah, I am in the presenter mode, so I'm not sure what else other than to make the screen bigger, but I can't do away with the top, if that's what you mean.
Okay, no, that's fine. It's just as we get more words, it's getting a bit more difficult to. But it's great, actually.
So while I'm sharing, I can't see the chat, so I'm relying on other panel members to please alert me if there's anyone can't see the link or anything.
It seems to be going well.
Yeah, I think we're slowing down.
It's lovely the way it's changing.
Yeah. So we can always come back to this, Leslie. I'm not sure.
That's fine. Michaela says it depends on the viewer's side. So I must minimize the presenter's box. Okay, thank you, Michaela Ashley Cooper. I see what you mean. Yes, it works.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela.
We all learn from each other.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
shall we stop there and then we can revisit it once everyone's had a
Yeah,
chance to? I think when
yeah,
responses are slowing down,
being
so
good enough.
hopefully everyone can see well enough. I'm not sure if you want to take over from here while I'm still sharing, or
Me.
yes.
Yeah, no, well, just looking. I mean, I'm sure we'll capture this and uh, make it available. But we can see that the big words. Thanks, Linda. Uh, on the Menti are inexperience and inexperienced, inadequacy, imposter syndrome, being too critical, lack of experience, misunderstanding, expertise. So it's really about feeling. I think the big things are feeling not good enough, not having the time to do it, not not having the uh, really not being good enough, and that's something that we're going to address certainly in my presentation. So if we can just save that, please. We might come back to it later. But Linda, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen now. Um, just hang on. Sorry, I just need to. Okay, that should say where to start with peer review. I hope it does. Linda, how much time do I have? It's now 11 minutes past 10.
I think
Um,
until 10 to 11.
okay. Please, if I'm, I'm terrible at keeping time. So please feel that, please don't be shy to stop me. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone for joining. And, yeah. Okay. So, I'm really, this is aimed at, I've looked, a lot of the people in the chat have not peer reviewed before. Some of you have. This is really aimed at people who have not peer reviewed before. Please, keep any questions and comments. We will have time to discuss them later. So please do use the Q&A. And let's get going. I was just see, I can't see my own. There we are. So the whole academic enterprise that we have is actually built on peer review. So it's not just simply you writing articles, but how do we decide that articles are good enough? It's by the process of peer review, and there are lots of problems with peer review. And there's currently, in fact, a crisis in peer reviewing because it's extremely hard for journals to find peer reviewers. But without peer review, we can't continue to function. And there's no journal editor. I've been a journal editor in different sorts of capacities for about 30 years. I don't think there's any journal editor, and there might be some on this call, who does not recognize how difficult it is to get people to agree to do peer reviewing, to take it on, and to do it within the time. But without it, we have no better way, nobody sort of a better way of us assessing how good submissions are to journals and other scholarly outputs. And who are the peers? We are all the peers. So peer reviewing is, some people think that there's some sort of special body of people somewhere living in the cloud or on a cloud. But in fact, everyone on this call, as soon as you publish anything, you yourself are a peer. And it is up to all of us to keep the peer review system going. And what I do as somebody who publishes a lot, for every time I send an article for review as an author or a co-author, I should be prepared to review an article that comes to me for review. Without that, you'll get a situation like I currently, with colleagues, have an article in with with an international journal. We sent it in January, and I know because I've been in correspondence with them, the editor tells me they need 2 peer reviews. They've sent it so far to 30 people, and they have 1 peer review in, so they still trying. So we've got to make sure that we keep contributing to keeping the system going. And that issue of time that was mentioned in the word cloud is really important. Okay. So the first thing to think about if you are becoming a peer reviewer is, what do I want as an author from a peer reviewer? And I want somebody to be looking at my work. I want somebody who's competent, who knows what they're doing, somebody who's constructive. I want somebody who's fair. I want somebody who is kind to me. And I want somebody who's clear in the feedback that they give to me. I want somebody who's going to make, whose aim is to help me make my work better. And if we have time during discussion, I can give some examples of that. I've had to cut it out of the presentation for reasons of time. And this is very important in terms of peer review. I do not want a peer reviewer who's trying to turn me into a version of themselves. I want, as an author, that the peer reviewer is going to help me to make my own work better, not to be a version of them. So it's just worth keeping that in mind. So this is what we have to try and be as peer reviewers: competent, constructive, fair, kind, clear, and focused on making the work of authors better. One of the biggest things that came out in this cloud, and I'm not surprised, is I'm not good enough. I don't have the confidence, I don't know enough. So welcome to academic life. Every single academic I know, including myself, feels like an imposter, certainly early in their career, but I still often feel that I'm going to be found out. And I often say the only academics who do not think that they're imposters are the real imposters. The only academics who think they know everything are people who actually don't know very much. So if you feel I'm not good enough to do this, I'm an imposter, welcome to the club. There are also ridiculous ideas about the academic hierarchy, the idea that only professors may be peer reviewers, only very experienced people may be peer reviewers. That's not so. There's in fact somebody on this call, I think you know who you are, who kindly did a review for me for the Scandinavian Journal of Disability Research. This person said to me, but I'm not good enough, I'm too junior, and I got an excellent review from this person they'd never reviewed before, and the author, who's one of the most senior people in the field, as it happens, said to me that they've never got such a good review before. So it's often junior people who do the best reviews. You have to think about what you really need to know and what you don't need to know. Nobody is the expert on everything, and you may not, as a peer reviewer, you may not be an expert on all parts of an article that you're going to review. And it's absolutely fine. In fact, it's desirable if you, as a peer reviewer, say, this is what I know, and this is what I don't know. So, for example, if there is a particular statistical technique used in a paper and you're not familiar with that technique, and then you can say to the editor, and you can say in your review, I can comment on these aspects, I don't know about that aspect. A good editor will generally try and look for a range of reviewers with a range of competencies, and one of the other reviewers won't know something that you know, but they may know something about that statistical technique or that theory, but you don't have to pretend to know things that you don't. But when you get asked to review something, you may not be sure if you are the right person to review this. Now, even once you've clicked that you are available to review, and we're going to go through this in a minute, because generally all you have to go on in the beginning is the abstract. But if you're not sure, you've clicked through from the abstract, read the paper through quickly for yourself, and then make a list of what you think you can do and what you can't do. How important is what you can do to helping the author and the journal? And how much of a barrier is what you can't do for your ability to be helpful? If you're still doubtful about your ability to be helpful, contact the editor and say, look, I'm not sure, I've looked at the paper, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. And the editor will be grateful to you, because we want to work with you. You are doing something, you are helping us for no money, and you are helping us with our processes. So, and the ideal reviewer is somebody who is helpful. So what Way and colleagues have called a peer mentor. By the way, just to mention, for all of these, we do make the slides available, so you don't have to frantically write things down. You're not expected to know everything, but you can make it clear what you do and don't know. And there are 4 big questions, according to Way and colleagues, that you have to ask yourself, and I'll be going through things in a bit more detail as we go. Do I, as a reviewer, understand the methods? Do I have a good idea who the audience is for this journal? Can I be a representative of that audience? Because different journals have different audiences, they have different skills and knowledge. Do I know something about the readership of the journal? Do I know enough about the content to comment, or is it completely foreign to me? And you might, on occasion, I've said to journal editors, look, I can talk about the methods here, but I don't really know this field. And the journal editors come back to me and said, well, that's fine. Just say in your review that you don't know enough about the content, but you can talk about the methods. Have the authors told me enough about the context of the work so that I can make an assessment where the work was done, what do I know about it, and so on. And this is particularly important in the field of international publishing, where if people are publishing for an international journal and they are publishing from Tajikistan, have they told me as a reviewer enough about the context, or do I need to, as part of my review, ask the authors for more information? Okay, so generally speaking, what happens when you get approached to do a peer review? So usually the journal will send you an abstract for the article, and you have a chance to accept or reject the review based on the abstract. There is nothing stopping you, if you're unsure, to go further, to say you'll accept it, and later to say, look, I've actually looked at the whole thing and I'm not sure. But before you do anything else, and this was something that you all mentioned in the word cloud, realistically assess whether you've got the time to conduct a review, either within the time asked of you by the journal or a bit later. So I, as a journal editor, would like to know at that early stage, you might be interested, but you might have tons of marking or whatever it is. You write back straight away to the journal and say, look, I think I could do this, but I would need an extra month, or I would need an extra 3 weeks. And then tell the journal editor, and the journal editor can let you know whether that is okay. Generally it is, because we so desperately get reviews in. Do you have a conflict of interest? So sometimes you can work out, and Susanne's going to talk about different approaches to peer review, but even if it's anonymous, you can work out which research group is doing it, and your group's in competition with that research group. then you have a conflict of interest and you shouldn't do the review. Or it's your best friend who's sitting at the bench next to you in the lab, and then you're not the right person. And if you are again, if you have a conflict of interest, say you can't do it. If you're unsure if you have a conflict of interest, you could say to the editor, this is a conflict of interest I think I have. What do you think? I recently had an example where I said to the journal, look, I think it's in a very small field. I think this is published by X, Y, and Z. I think I've worked out who the author is. I don't think it would really affect the quality of my review. Would you consider that to be a conflict of interest? And the editor of that particular journal said, no, I think it's okay. I'll keep an eye on that, but carry on with the review. And other editors may say other things. Now you turn your attention, once you've gone through the practical questions, have you got enough time? Conflict of interest. Now you turn your attention to the academic business of the review. And before you've said to the journal, yes, I'm going to accept this review, generally all you have is the abstract. So read the abstract carefully and a few times, and you should be able to find, if you're lucky, and if the abstract is well written, an indication of key parts of the article in the abstract. And I want to say to you, just as a side issue, is that for those of you who are inexperienced reviewer, you're probably an inexperienced author, and this is why part of why abstracts are so incredibly important, because this is what your reviewer sees. And ideally, in an abstract, you as the potential reviewer, just from the abstract, should be able to see, should be able to know why the authors did the study, how they did the study, steps that they went through, what they found, and what it means for the readership of the journal. You should be able to find those within the abstract. We have fancy words for those, with the rationale, the method, the procedure, the results, the discussion and conclusion. But these are essentially the parts of any academic article, and you should be able to find those things. And on the basis of that, you can say, well, okay, I think I'm going to click. I can go ahead and look at the whole manuscript, because I think I have competence that is relevant in this area. Once you have the whole manuscript now, you're going to start looking at things that you obviously can't have seen in a short abstract. And for me, one of the most important things in assessing how good an article is really about how the article's put together. How do the different parts of the article link together? Does the research question follow clearly and directly from the rationale and the literature review? So I am currently reviewing a very interesting submission to an international journal, where there's a very well written introduction, and then there comes a question which is kind of related to the introduction, but doesn't really follow from the introduction. So the parts don't kind of line up. Do the conclusions follow from the data, or they're much more general claims? So, people will do a study on rates of anxiety amongst school children, and the conclusions are we don't have enough teachers in schools, when you haven't assessed whether anything to do with the number of teachers in schools. It may be true that we don't have enough teachers in schools, but that doesn't follow from the data. And then I think a sign of good science and good research is, are the authors clear about what they can know from their work, but also what they can't know? And generally speaking, if we think about an academic article as a sort of a double funnel, and those of you who've been in my writing workshops will recognize this, essentially what we want to see is a shape of an article where you start at the top of the funnel where the readership of the journal is, and the author is taking you as a reviewer through the literature to the center of the funnel, to your particular question, your particular answer, and then they take you as the reviewer from the results out to the implications of that article for the readership of that journal. So how do we make a decision about whether research is good or publishable? Here are a couple of ideas. This is a big discussion, but here are some ideas. Number one, we do not assess the quality of research based on whether we agree with the conclusions. So in the academic field, I have very often found myself in very strong agreement with authors, but it's not a good paper. And I've suggested rejection. So we may suggest rejecting a submission where we do agree with the conclusions. Conversely, and I've recently had one in the Scandinavian journal that I edit, I've had a piece where one of the reviewers said to me, in their covering letter to their review, I really don't like research like this. I really disagree with this, but it's very well written, very well argued, and there is no reason not to publish this. And in fact, that particular reviewer has suggested that we accept and will probably now write a response in the journal to the author. So you do not have to agree with the author. And what are we really concerned with? We are concerned with the quality of the methods and the relationship between the argument and the methods that the person has used. Okay, so there are a couple of other considerations, but that is our absolute key question. We have to think about, as reviewers, about ethical considerations. Is there a clear statement in the article about ethical permissions from an accredited institutional review board or ethical committee? If there are such statements, is there a statement, sorry, I made a mistake in my typo there, where applicable about how people have used AI and large language models, and does that fit in with the journal policy? And I'm sure we'll have much more to discuss about that. But even if you're convinced that the person has been through the formal ethical review process, and I say this as in my other life, I'm one of the research integrity officers at my university, and really what ethics is not a set of check boxes. So yes, they've ticked this box, but you may still have concerns as a reviewer. So something may have been through ethical processes, but you may still think, no, I'm concerned about this, concerned about that. Then you must raise those concerns. You must engage with ethical questions, and always raise them, even if you're not 100% sure they are relevant. It's also partly for the editor to think about that, but always raise those. Now, because then there are issues with the particular formatting of the journal. Now, generally speaking, depending on how stressed and busy the editorial team are, they would have looked at this. Has the person submitted in the journal format? But please do consider these kinds of issues. Is the paper way over the length that's acceptable in that journal? Some journals will accept articles of 3,000 words, some of 8,000 words, etc. Is your paper, generally speaking, the over-length papers are the ones that are often of particular concern? Is the referencing style, it might be lovely, but is it the same that is used in the journal? And is the writing style correct for the journal? So, for example, if you think about South African Journal of Science, which is an interdisciplinary journal, one of the things that would be particularly important in the South African Journal of Science is we would want clear writing where technical language, generally speaking, is explained to non-specialists in a particular area. Excuse me, because we're an interdisciplinary journal. The writing style for the same article for a more subject-specific journal might be more technical. And very important, you are a reviewer. If you suggest revisions, which is your job to do, can these all be done within the word limit for the journal? So if, for example, you are reviewing an article which has been sent to a journal and the submission is 3,000 words long, and the journal will not accept articles longer than 3,000 words. If you're going to suggest major revisions and additions, what you need to think about as a reviewer is the author going to manage to do all of these things within 3,000 words? And then what's very helpful for you as a reviewer, if you think they must, A, B, and C must be added in, you might want to say to the author, one of the ways you can do that is cutting down on X, Y, and Z so that you can still make it within the space that's available in the journal. Now, there are quite a lot of useful checklists that are available. This is quite a helpful one from a couple of years ago. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just showing you that it's available because you will get this when you get a copy of my presentation, but it's very, very useful just going through this checklist for performing a peer review. So this will be made available to you. Different journals have different ways that you are asked as a reviewer to give recommendations. And some journals specifically say, do not give a recommendation. Yes, this will do that. But generally speaking, the journal asks you, what do you suggest? The least common is accept with no changes. Don't be afraid to make this recommend. If you can't find anything wrong with the paper, and you think the paper is absolutely excellent and not a word needs to be changed, then suggest acceptance. I reviewed something once for the journal The Lancet, and this imposter thing, feeling not good enough because The Lancet is the top medical journal. It was absolutely brilliant. And I kept on thinking, if I don't say that there have to be changes, people will think I'm a terrible reviewer and that I'm stupid and so on. As it happens, I couldn't find anything wrong. I said, accept as is. And there were two other reviewers and they both said, accept as is. But it's rare, but that happens. Minor revisions are relatively minor. And quite often when you suggest those revisions, you won't expect as a reviewer to see a revised version of the manuscript. You can leave it to the editor. So like I suggest these few small things need to be changed, and you won't hear it again. More common is revise and resubmit, where you ask for major changes, and often you will expect to see that again. And one of the features of revise and resubmit, which I don't have time to go into here, is when the authors revise and resubmit, they should be able to give you not only the new version, but a document showing point by point how they have responded to your suggestions and their suggestions, the suggestions of other reviewers, sorry. And you should be able to go through those when you're looking at a revised version. Unfortunately, the most common response is reject. So the South African Journal of Science, our rejection rate is over 90%. So that's the most common. But if you're a reviewer, in every case, you should give reasons for your recommendation. You should be able to show on what basis you give evidence. You have made a decision. You should be able to give evidence for your decision. How do you give feedback to authors? And here are some examples of what not to do. These are all real examples, which I've actually received these from peer reviewers. Telling an author that an article adds nothing to knowledge, or saying, or being rude, I can't see why the author bothered to do this, or saying this is not academic, or this is a bad article. That's not a very good, it's very general. It doesn't tell the author how to do anything. It's insulting. What we want to do as peer reviewers is we want to make the author's work as strong as possible, even if we are rejecting the article. We want to help them to be better next time, because that's what we want from reviewers. So how do you give feedback? Give the kind of feedback that you yourself would like to receive. Try and be as constructive as possible. Give reasons for your views. Make clear suggestions for improvements with as much detail as possible. And there's this funny kind of paradox, because when you as an author receive pages and pages and pages of comments from a reviewer, you often think, oh my goodness, what is all of this? But actually, the longer review reports are generally more detailed and telling the authors clearly what they need to do. So generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, a longer review report is better than a short one. Okay, so as a general principle, much easier to tell people what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them not to do. Write clearly and simply. Most people writing in English language journals are not first language. You may not be yourself. Most people doing peer review are not first language. There'll be times when you're not sure or just have a preference. Say that. You can say, look, these are the things that I absolutely require you to do. Here are some other things for your consideration. I would prefer to see it, but I leave that up to you as the author. So a bit more formally, this is from Dudek, Marks, Wood and colleagues. They say, be supportive but clear, summarize your understanding of the work, explain your recommendation, base your overall impression on actual content. As I said, give evidence, indicate strengths and weaknesses if you can, make suggestions for improvements, be detailed and clear, and explain everything. Just saying the methods are not good enough or they're insufficient really doesn't help the author. You've got to say, how could they make a sufficient method? Okay, so in this whole business, when you filled in the word cloud, you will see that you're not the only one who feels, I can't do this. So one of the things that we encourage is getting help from others and giving help from others. So if the journal has a policy or you've asked the editor, you can actually do your peer reviewing together with other people. But you must be clear to protect the confidentiality and respect for authors. And what we don't want is where senior researchers just give an article to junior researchers and say, do the review for me, and the junior researchers are not acknowledged. So remember your rights as a reviewer, remember the rights of the authors, and remember those of the journal. If you're not sure, ask your supervisor or a more experienced colleague to include you in peer reviewing when they get approached. If you get asked to do a peer review, ask a more senior colleague or supervisor to help you, or develop peer review buddy systems. But with all of these, make sure that the journal knows that this is what you're doing. How does a buddy system work? It can link in with writing support systems where you sit and writing together with other people, or as part of a journal club. Make a commitment that you and your buddies will peer review the reviews you yourselves receive from journals. So you're going to look at the quality of reviews that you yourself and other people that you work with have received from journals. Assess the reviews that you receive in terms of competence, respectfulness, constructiveness, and so on, and suggest in your group ways in which those reviews could be improved. And then within your group, you can actually do a peer system of reviewing. So establish the rules for confidentiality of your group, get permission from the editor. Each of you independently sketches out areas to be covered in the review, distribute the tasks and each do your tasks, have a look at what one another have done, and then assemble the full review and send it off to the journal. And this is my last slide. I'm a journal editor. You know, don't undermine the peer review process while it's underway, but as an author yourself, give journals feedback on peer review experiences, good and bad. Never be shy to particularly after your article has been accepted or rejected. If you have comments on the peer reviews you yourself have received, let the editor know about it. We need constantly to peer review, but we also need all of us to step up and peer review, because otherwise the whole system of academic publishing can't work. And Linda, I think I actually managed to do that more or less exactly on time. So thank you.
Exactly on time, Leslie. Thank you very much. I think hopefully if we pose that Menti question again, we would get different answers. But don't worry, we won't do that yet. We do have a few questions.
Okay.
Perhaps we can take one or two now, and then
Sure.
we'll come back to the others in the Q&A.
Sure.
So I think there's probably Anonymous has summed up what a lot of people are wondering, and that is that it seems to them that the peer reviewer has to do all the work, including checking the references, etc. So what does the editor actually do? And it seems like a lot for the peer reviewer to take on without a form of remuneration.
Okay, well, firstly, most editors are not remunerated. Full disclosure, I'm usually, in my job as editor-in-chief of South African Journal of Science, I am remunerated. Not as much as I might like, but generally speaking, editors are not remunerated either. Editorials, look, the editorial decisions are quite complicated. So the editor is very reliant on you. The peer reviewer does not have to check absolutely everything. So you know, it's just helpful to look at formatting and those sorts of things. Ideally, that should be an editorial task, but it's helpful. The editor has actually quite difficult decisions to make. First of all, the editor has to decide, does this fit in the scope of our journal? Should it go to peer review in the first place? So for me, I'm not a peer reviewer on the South African Journal of Science. Practically every morning of the week, Monday to Friday, I am spending time deciding whether things should or should not go for peer review. Then it is the job of the editor. The editor has to assess the quality of your reviews and has to weigh up has to approach reviewers, find reviewers, case reviewers, which is a lot of what we do. But assuming we get 2 or 3 reviews in, the editor has to weigh up how do these reviews fit together? Are they contradictory? It's not uncommon for one reviewer to say, this is the best thing that I've ever read in my life, and another reviewer to say, this must be rejected. what has to happen then? Do we have to get more reviewers? So the editor has lots of things to do, including deciding, looking more carefully before publication at issues like formatting, word count, etc., etc. But the entire system really of deciding whether something goes into an academic journal, particularly when we have anonymous peer review, and Susan will talk about different models, is very heavily based on the peer reviewers. I hope I've answered that, Linda.
Yeah, I think, Leslie, also it's important to mention that, at the journal itself, so in our case, it would be Nadia and Pomlani, make sure that the manuscript is reviewer ready.
Most journals do that, but not all. Yeah.
Yes. So there is a lot done before a reviewer even sees the manuscript, but it's just sometimes easier for a reviewer who's reading it in detail to also point out things that they pick up. So it's not at all the case that they're doing all the work, although I can see
they're doing a lot of work, but so are we.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, and this is just something that I feel strongly about, and it comes to the question that Nokutula has asked about, waiting 2 years to hear back as an author on their manuscript, and that is something editors also do, is follow up very closely on reviewers. And we are struggling, as are all journals, to get responses from reviewers. And I think it's important for everyone to recognize that peer review is peer review. It is not a one-person thing. It is a dual thing. You cannot be an author unless you are a reviewer, because you cannot be a peer unless you are a peer. And if you are expecting peer reviewers to review your article, then review is something you need to do. So there are journals that remunerate peer reviewers, and there is a lot of controversy around that. And in my opinion, it's not a good thing. In my opinion, it should be peer review, that you are expecting your papers to be reviewed, and so you have to review your peers' papers. That's kind of how it's supposed to work, but that's a lot of different opinions on that topic. So we have quite a few more questions we will come back to in the Q&A, and perhaps some will be answered by others' presentations as well. So thank you very much, Leslie, for setting the groundwork on what everything peer review is, and I think prompting more questions as well, which is good. So thank you very much, Leslie.
Thank you.
And Susan joins us now to present on different peer review models and their technologies. And we also have a poll for participants related to that. So I'm not sure, Susan, should we share the poll now?
What shall we do, Linda? Let's share it now. Let's just see if we can change people's perceptions at least, and be informative. Let's see what comes up. It is helpful for the presentation as well. So please proceed. Thank you.
Okay, I hope everyone can see it. So there are 2 questions related to peer review models. The first is, as an author, which peer review model would you prefer? A single anonymous peer review, a double anonymous peer review, open peer review, or another type of model? And then the same question, if you were the reviewer, would you prefer a single anonymous peer review, double anonymous, open peer review, or another model? So the answers are coming in quite quickly. We have about 100 out of 319. Not sure if I make it bigger, if everyone can see.
Are you sharing screen, Linda? Not yet.
It should be. Can you not see it, Susan?
No, I can't. Maybe there's something wrong with me.
No, I also can't see it. Yeah, there's plenty wrong with me, but I also can't see it.
Okay, no, then I've done something wrong. No, Nadia's going to see if she can. Okay, I'm not sure if the other attendees can see it. Okay, we've got about a 60% participation. I'm going to share now.
No, they're saying they can't see. Oh, now we can see.
Yeah,
Okay,
now
so you can see the results. So
Yes,
I
we
think as an author, most people, 66% of people prefer a double anonymous model. And also as a reviewer, most participants would prefer a double anonymous review. So about 2/3 in each case, which is very interesting. And no one selected other, so that's also interesting. Just going to capture this so we can come back to it later. And then hopefully I can stop sharing and over to you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Linda. Let's just see. I assume you can see that, right?
Yes.
There you go. Right.
Yes.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you very much for this opportunity. And Leslie, thank you very much for doing the foundation and starting to lay some bricks on which I can just build this house further. So thank you very much for that. And there's some excellent questions sort of in the background happening, and I'm so tempted just to start with the questions and forget about my presentation. But I can see, according to the Mentimeter, that there is actually a need for us just to go through and just look at the different peer review models and see what they are. For me, just sort of visiting again the literature and just looking at what new has been written, what is being said, and especially being an open science and open access advocist, I like to sort of monitor what's being said about the open peer review system, but we'll get to that a little bit later because it's quite complex. And I can see it will be very difficult actually to get peer reviewers and authors just to accept it as much as we can see now, the double-blinded peer review process as such. But thank you. I'll be talking about the peer review models and then a little bit about the technologies, just a few remarks around that. And I want to remind you, and I saw a question that asked, is peer review still the gold standard? Yes, it is. Because if we don't have, what else do we have in its place? Peers plays an extremely important role in ensuring quality and integrity and to make sure that the ethical side of things are being taken care of. Absolutely. That's such a good question. I was so grateful that you actually asked that. So let's just be reminded. So why peer review? Remember, it is designed to assess the validity and the quality and often the originality of articles for publication. So it's very important just to understand and to be reminded that its ultimate purpose, and I want to say ultimate purpose, is to maintain the integrity of science. Because if we don't have it, what else do we have in its place? And when we talk about open peer review, you will see what I mean. Because there are other elements coming into the open peer review that's actually bringing some mistrust, etc. with. I'm so sorry about my phone ringing in the back. Can you just give me a minute? This is very unprofessional, and I do apologize for that. Thank you for bearing with me. Right. So as we said, is that it's very important to understand that peer review is to maintain the integrity of the science, whereby we actually filter out invalid or poor quality articles. What is very interesting is in sort of just reading up again and just looking at what's happening and what are people's perceptions still about peer review. Of course, you've got these different lenses being applied, and the one being from a published perspective, especially if we look at the very large publishers, is that they filter for the content and they want better quality articles for better quality journals, and so creating better journal brands. I think that is the ultimate goal, is the better journal brands sometimes. And sometimes then the focus it's very different, and that sort of the commercial value, etc., then gets is then the prominent sort of focus of that publisher. But then, what does an editor say about the peer review? It's to point out the specifics about flaws in the paper structure is paramount. Are the methods valid? Is the data clearly presented? And are conclusions supported then by the data? And then, of course, we have those fence sitters that looks at the system. So that's why I was very grateful that you asked the question, is it still the gold standard? Of course, we have the critiques out there. And even the study still, whilst monitoring the literature, shows that after peer review, some articles still contain inaccuracies. And I think this is very important and demonstrate, and this is now the other scary thing, that most rejected papers will go on to be published somewhere else. So it does have some loopholes. We can poke some holes in it, but we should understand that this is a human activity and that the occasional errors of peer review are not reasons to just abandon it, to throw the baby with the bathwater out. The mistakes could be far worse without it, and the effects and the system and the trustworthiness of what we publish will be very much questionable if we do not have peer review as such. Now, I just want to speak very generally about the different designs of the use of peer review. When you're in a university or in an organization, you are already a possible peer reviewer. And do remember that, because you will go right through your academic career and you will find that you are often asked for an opinion. And what is that other than doing a peer review of a situation, of an organization? And that is very important, is to understand that it is a role that we have to play. And the sooner you sort of get into it, the better. But we all have to start somewhere. So we like to just brand it very generally and just think about the journal peer review. And as I said, it's a system to serve as a filter to separate or potentially harmful content out papers with irrelevant, trivial, weak, misleading, or potentially harmful content, while also improving the clarity, the accuracy, and utility of potential papers. We must remember that this process is actually time intensive. I saw another question that said, how much time should you spend on this peer review thing? And for me personally, it varies from manuscript to manuscript. Sometimes I give it a good read and I would walk around for a couple of days and just think about it, because it's complex, it's difficult. I can feel, without really interrogating that manuscript, that this is not right. It needs much more work. And then that's what brings me clarity. Some is much easier in a sense, and you read it and you feel comfortable and you can very easily make some suggestions and give good sort of reasons that it just should go under, some changes need to be enacted, and then it can be published. But it takes the effort of mostly volunteer staff to evaluate papers for publication and construct objective and useful feedback, just as Leslie has said. I also saw the question, do peer reviewers get paid? No, they don't. Mostly not. Because if you start paying people to do things, it is also questionable. And sort of trust issues come to the fore. So if I start paying you, there's an expectancy that you need to perform in a very particular direction. And that becomes very dangerous. So it's quite a challenge for all the editors, is to find a way, is how to incentivize the peer reviewers in the work that they do. So the open peer review, and you will see, I will speak about that, is also an effort and an attempt to profile and to acknowledge the peer review that these reviewers do. But it's dangerous to pay them. Seek other ways in how you actually reward them and incentivize them. when they do peer review. I know SHIS has some prizes they have on an annual basis for the best peer review, etc. So that is the best way. I need to acknowledge a person that way. I hope that is helpful. But now remember, so journal peer review is one way of how we can actually review or peer review. And then you get researcher evaluation, and I'm quite sure I saw a lot of South African academics. You are very well versed in the NRF accreditation process for researchers, where you are rated as an A or a B or a C or a Y or a P. And they normally do it through peer review panels, where they get peers together in that particular subject field. And where the peers, according to criteria, I think that's very important. Peer review doesn't just happen how you feel or what do you think. And there's always a criteria which guides you in what is expected of what you should evaluate. But then these peer review panels evaluate the researchers, and then the accreditation or then the rating will be according to what has been discussed as a group of peers. And then you also get a mixed method design, which is actually quite an interesting one. And we at ASSIP, we follow this particular way. And that is where we combine peer review with bibliometrics. So it's a quantitative and a qualitative way to gather information on a particular matter. And we have reviewed journals in that regard, where we have panels, we have bibliometric analysis, we bring the two together because then we have two data, well, actually 3 data sets. It's from the editors, the bibliometric analysis, and of the panel. We put them together, we discuss it, we come up with a recommendation about a journal, and that is known actually as a consensus and an evidence-based way of going about to conduct reviews on a particular journal and to get multiple input and lenses applied to that. And then, of course, a combination of self-evaluation and external evaluation. And that normally happens in institutional audits. As I've had an institutional audit last year, so there were many reviews of internal from staff members, etc., but also a panel was put together from external people. And then the different views of these two groups then were combined, and that then manifested into an institutional audit. So can you see that there are many times in your life that you don't only have to do journal peer review, but where you are requested as a peer and as an expert. And I think this is what you have to capitalize on, is nobody knows what you know. And you can bring that knowledge then to the table to give more insight and perspective to whatever you have to evaluate. Just wanted to clarify that and just put it on the table. So yes, we've been speaking, and the Mentimeter actually asked you, what do you like? Do you like single blind or do you like double blind? And somebody said, please explain. So let's explain. So a single blind system is where the referee knows the identity of the author and the institution that submitted the work. And the author does not know the identity of the reviewer. So it's not completely anonymous. But there's still a factor and an area, somebody knows somebody. So the referee knows the identity of the author and the institution that submitted the work, but the author does not know the identity of the reviewer. Now, what are the advantages to this system? I think it's better than nothing. I know there are subject fields that says, no, they only do single blind. They don't do double blind. It takes too long, or there's not too many experts in the field, and the single blind does the job, which is fine. At least there is somebody externally looking at the manuscript that needs to be evaluated. So in my own opinion, it's better than nothing. It might not be the ultimate. And it does reduce the risk of plagiarism or the misuse of confidential information by the reviewers. So it does bring a little bit of policing into the system. But then what is the disadvantage? As I said, now you just got one person that's actually reviewing that article. So it could still bring in some biasness or some discrimination on gender, ethnicity, nationality, or seniority. I think the system is often blamed that there's some gatekeeping. And when you're an older professor and you're a young emerging researcher, and now you have to review a more established researcher, you know, it does create tension. And we did see it when we asked you that question. You did say you're feeling uncertain and you're not serious, sure about the seniors, etc. So it does help to function on more peer review reports than just the one. So you can see it is quite a danger. There's limited diversity and creativity in research by favoring conventional perspectives. I think that's the beauty of having more people in on reviewing a paper. Are these different lenses? And Leslie said, well, don't be worried that you're not an expert, etc. It's very interesting sometimes as an editor to look at the different reviews that come in. And each person has applied its own lens and its own take on the things. I think the problem is when you have disagreements among the actual reviewers about publishing an article or not. And I think there you have to take additional steps to see, well, how do you balance this out? Junior or less known authors, and this is the problem that we saw when you did your Mentimeter, authors may be discouraged from submitting to prestigious journals or challenging established theories. So it is quite a daunting situation when you only have sort of this anonymity just from the one side. It's very one-sided, so to speak. So what then is a double-blinded system? So in this system, the identity of both the author and the reviewer are hidden. So they do not know about each other at all. So you can see it's totally anonymous. It is almost independent, should be without any biasness to actually conduct the peer review as such. So what are the advantages? It improves the peer review. The process allows reviewers to be more objective, and that eliminates the biasness and the discrimination based on identity, and encouraging innovation and originality by allowing authors to present novel or controversial ideas. It increases the confidentiality and credibility of the peer review process by reducing the potential for conflicts of interest or personal agendas, because the system are blamed for that. And we have to take all the precautions to actually eliminate that. So what are the disadvantages? So double-blind review may be difficult or impossible to conceal the identity of the authors or the reviewers, especially in small or specialized fields. So even it could even be a danger with double-blinded review. And interesting enough, it hinders communication, collaboration between the authors and the reviewers as well. It does. And it delayed the publication process. If you speak to editors and you ask them what is the one single problem that you have, they would say to get peer reviewers, the time it takes to peer review, to anonymize the manuscripts and check the inadvertent clues. So it is quite something. So reviewers in anonymous reviews carry no responsibility for those views. Very interesting. But in practice, a decision can be appealed by the author. The process takes place behind closed doors, so to speak, or rather password privileges, and the reviews are not published. And I think these are very important elements. And then a triple blind review. So this is a very interesting one, and I have not really come across this practice, but it is a point when all the identifiers are removed from a submitted manuscript, so that even that the handling editors and the authors and the reviewers remain blind from each other. So that's a very interesting one, to go totally anonymous. And then, of course, open peer review. So in this system, this is very important because I can think it does make reviewers very nervous about what could happen, the implications thereof. So it's where the identity of both the author and the reviewer are exposed. So it's not anonymous anymore. And that the reviewers' names and the reports are published alongside the paper. So this is the point that I think that most of you would actually run away. But there are systems in place and there are things happening. And whether this is happening in the real world, well, we'll interrogate that question a little bit more now. I do like what OpenAIRE already in 2016 sort of indicated. So it's open access infrastructure for research in Europe. And that often narrowly defined as peer review where the author-reviewer identities are disclosed to one another. It's best understood as an umbrella term. That is what I like. Describing a variety of innovations which can open up. So what they're saying is just open up this process so that the disadvantages of in either single or double blind are then being removed by modifying one or more aspects to make it more inclusive, transparent, and or accountable. So I really like the second part of the statement, that it's an umbrella term, that you've got to be innovative, and you can do little parts of it just to open up a little bit more the process, and perhaps in a sense being more transparent. Now, we think that open peer review only happened yesterday or a couple of years ago, but it hasn't. It has actually been around for the last 20 years. The British Medical Journal, Biomed Central, they all use the open peer review system for the past 20 years. But it's gaining a lot of traction through the open science movement, like people like me that really advocates for opening up and open science as such. The thing is, it is very poorly understood. And what is also important is that we must acknowledge that researcher attitudes show important barriers to actually implement it. Reviewers and researchers are concerned and scared sometimes to have their identities exposed, especially attached to specific reviewers and to specific authors for that matter. So as journals are moving forward now to implement this and to experiment with these different ways of open, it is really clear that we need best practice guidelines to guide this implementation. I don't think one can just implement it and just walk away and hope for the best that it will actually be successful. So open peer review can actually take place in very different stages of the review process. It can be pre-publication or post-publications, offering really extended communication and knowledge exchange between researchers. So there's a whole space being created where reviewers and authors, and sometimes, I think this is the scary part, where the public can come in and give their opinion and also do peer reviewing. So the openness of the system often differs, and that's what I'm saying, and this is very important, of what is revealed to whom and at which point. So the main core elements is revealing the reviewer identities, open identities, and publishing reviews, which then is called open reports. So those are the two elements. So the primary elements then of open peer review are open identities. Authors and reviewers are aware of each other's identities. And then open reports. Review reports are published alongside the relevant article. And then open participation is that the wider community is able to contribute to the review process. So not even is the process changing, but you can see the terminology is also changing to open identities, open reports, and open participation, and not necessarily single-blinded, double-blinded, etc. So there's even a language change, which makes things quite complex. But those were the primary sort of indicators. So now you have secondary characteristics, which is also important. It's open pre-review manuscripts. Manuscripts are made immediately available. Preprint service like Archive, and you must know, I'm quite sure you're quite aware of that, in advance of any formal peer review procedures. So before anybody has had a look, it's a raw manuscript that you place on a particular server platform, and it's there to be reviewed before any formal things have happened. And then you get open final version commenting. Review or commenting on final version of record publications. And I'll show you an example of that, where there comes a finalization of a particular process. And it's being said final, and then it moves on that it's actually been peer reviewed sufficiently. And then open interaction is a direct reciprocal discussion between the author and the reviewer. And that is allowed and it is encouraged. Or even between the reviewers, there could be some discussions. And then the fourth one is open platforms. So the review is completely decoupled from publishing, that it's facilitated by a different organizational entity than your venue of publication. And I will show you examples of that. So can you see that when we started to talk about just the review process and single and double, we are getting into this myriad of concepts and things that can be done to open up, and which as a reviewer and as an editor is certainly very challenging, and one have to keep your head straight to understand what the implications would be and what is it that you would implement. What are the different versions of open? So you can have one, or you can have a combination of these different elements. And then for the manuscript under review, some journals might only include optional open identities. Others might publish the entire multi-stage review process. So it is really for the editor to decide how open does he or she actually want to have the process. But then it's also for the reviewer to understand the process and how open it would be. There are many disadvantages, and I'm just really going to touch upon a few, not to exceed my time. I am very wary of that as well. But the thing is, at the moment, sometimes the disadvantages actually outweighs the advantages. And it is really a very concerted effort that an editorial team will have to do, is to convince both the editors, the researchers, and the reviewers to participate in this open process. I think the biggest criticism is where reviewers refuse to participate in such a process because they have concerns. They don't feel protected, not as an author, sometimes not as a reviewer. And again, young reviewers feel exposed, especially if they have to review the manuscript of more senior researchers. And so this changing landscape of academic and professional publication presents formidable challenges to the industry and some potential portended correctiveness that affects the quality assurance of peer review processes. So I just want to mention that. And then secondly to that is I've mentioned it here as dumbing down of intellectual life in general, because it depends on how open your process is, because now you can throw it open to everybody to comment and to say something. And that is actually quite dangerous, because I said right in the beginning that peer review is still the gold standard in academic publishing and in research in its entirety, and how education and everything functions, that we cannot just wipe it from the table. We have to carefully actually engage with it at that. I just have some very general ideas here for editors, maybe for peer reviewers as well. Is if you set on this path, be sure what exactly is it you want to do. Consult with your stakeholders to see how do they feel, what do they allow, and take it stage by stage. And then technology. Technology in this field is actually highly problematic. I'll show you some examples. It is really crazy because it's how you implement and what you have to do, and it's quite expensive. And sort of the technology behind everything is quite complex and needs an expert as such. And maybe sometimes just to do a pilot and see how it goes, and then feed that back to your stakeholder group to say, how did it go? And then, of course, training. You have to train your editors, you have to train your peer reviewers in how to engage in this very particular process. So this is the start of the different platforms that I just wanted to show you. So this is Open Research Africa. This is a preprint. Well, it's sort of a very hybrid model, actually. It brands itself as a Open Research Africa, but it's also actually a preprint repository where you could deposit your manuscripts. It's a subscription-based platform, so you can imagine that most of the researchers in Africa, if they're not well sponsored, cannot participate in this particular way of actually publishing your articles. I see you have put your camera on, Linda. Are you muted? Do I still have a little minute?
Very quick minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, sure, will do. So all I want to say, I'm just quickly going to flick through these ones. Can you see that they are different? Here in the corner, there's the reviewed preprints, etc. And then if you go there, you can see again it's different. And just trying technological indicate the different stages. And then certain platforms do have open science software. But how sophisticated are they? We still have to check them. There are peer review recognition, like OrgID, which, but then you can see there at the bottom, it says peer reviews can only be added to your OrgID record by trusted organization using member API credentials. So you have to be a member of the OrgID to recognize peer review. And then you have services that did open reviews where you just send off your manuscript and whoever reviews it. And I'm not completely sure if I must say luckily, but you can see that the portable peer review scholarly kitchen, which normally interrogates all these issues, says rest in peace. And it is problematic. We will not have found a good way. The PUC said also is busy with a statement on the recognition of the work of editors and peer reviewers of academic journals and books in South Africa. We hope it will be approved at our next council meeting in October. So I have alluded to the criticisms. Integration, subscription prices, no standardization, expertise of peer reviewers not guaranteed, and embedding peer review acknowledgement in national awarding and recognition structures. I want to conclude and say the integrity and the excellence of scholarly communication are foundational to the advancement of knowledge, science, and the development of academia. Recognizing the critical role that editors, reviewers, and publishers play in this process. Let's not forget that in striving for a good and ultimate quality peer review system. Thank you very much, Linda, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Susan. I think you packed a lot of information into all of the benefits and challenges of different models, as well as other kinds of contexts of peer review. So I think that was a lot of information there. Thank you very much for that. We have no time for questions now. So I'm gonna ask Nadia if she can please proceed with her presentation, and then we will get to questions at the end. So Nadia, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Sorry, we just have a bit of an echo because we are in the same office. Okay, so I just want to run a quick poll before I start my presentation, just for interest to see where everyone is at in terms of reviewer profiles and what they know about it. So I have started the poll. So if we could just have a quick voting session on this, and I'll give you some feedback on the results. So for those on YouTube Live, the question is just, do you have a profile on a reviewer recognition platform? Yes or no, or not sure what it is. Okay, so just give it a few more seconds. Thank you very much. I think that's enough. So just to share the results with everyone, I hope you can see these. So 10% of people said yes, they have a profile on a review recognition platform, 52% said no, and 37% are not sure what it is. So I think that's actually good statistics because it means you will learn quite a few things today, hopefully, in my presentation. So on that note, let me quickly share my screen. My presentation. There we go. Okay, so yes, welcome everyone. So this session will be on tools for recognizing and rewarding peer review. I would like to just start by asking the question, why do we need to recognize and reward peer review? Well, first of all, and from what you've heard today, peer review requires a lot of time and effort and specialized expertise. Also, due to the voluntary nature of peer review, so most peer reviewers are not compensated financially or by any other means, so they do it in their free time above their own hectic workloads. We also want to do this to try and encourage participations and grow our peer reviewer fields. And then also to create a more sustainable peer review system. And by this, we just mean, as Linda's also mentioned earlier today, and I think it's a very good way to say it, if you are publishing papers and you're expecting other people to peer review your paper, you need to also do peer review. So we should try and create a balanced workload in terms of peer review so that people don't become burnt out if we rely on them too much. And then I just want to tell you a bit about methods that are already being used to recognize and reward peer reviewers. So most journals publish an annual reviewer list in which they thank their reviewers for the previous year. Journals also provide thank you letters and certificates for peer reviews completed. Some journals also offer discounts or waivers to their peer reviewers. Sorry, I just want to move this video block away to see my screen. And then some journals have annual awards and recognition events. So for example, our journal, we also have an annual peer reviewer award where we try and recognize and reward good peer review. And then editorial team or board invitations. So this is just if you are reviewing for a journal and they know you submit good quality peer reviews. If perhaps a position opens up on an editorial board or team, you might be someone that they would consider to fill that position. And then at the bottom, you'll see I've just made it a little bit bigger because today I would like to focus a bit more on peer reviewer profiles. And the reason for this is that you as a reviewer have the ability to create a profile, maintain it, and use it to actually gain some benefit and recognition from your own peer reviews. So what is a peer reviewer profile? It is a record of an individual's peer review activities, typically showcasing their review interests, number of reviews completed, the journals reviewed for, the quality and timeliness of reviews, and any recognitions or rewards received. So why do you need one? First of all, to obviously keep track of your peer review activities and have a record of that. to be discovered by editors and invited for peer review. So a bit later, I'll be telling you about peer review platforms that track and verify peer reviews. And if you are on that platform, you will also be included in the reviewer database. To ensure you are matched to review papers that align with your expertise. So if you have your expertise or research interests outlined on your profile, it will ensure that you are actually invited to review papers that is within your expertise. And then lastly, also to complement your academic record. So whenever for your CV, or if you're applying for jobs, promotions, grants, funding, anything like that, it's good to also include your review activities over and above just the publications that you have done thus far. So what are elements of a good or an effective reviewer profile? First, your personal information, your name, surname, affiliation, and contact details. This is just so that an editor is able to reach out to you if they would like to invite you for peer review. Listing your areas of expertise, your research interests and keywords. Again, this is just to help you get matched with papers that are within your expertise to review. It will usually have your review history, the number of reviews you've completed, the journals reviewed for, and the quality and the timeliness of those reviews. And then also certificates or recognition. So if you've received any badges, certificates, or recognition or awards from journals for peer review, you can add it to this profile. Okay, so there are many, there are quite a few platforms out there that track and verify peer review activities, but today I would like to introduce you to 3. Some journals even have their own reviewer platforms that they use to recognize and reward peer reviewers, so keep an eye out for those. But yes, I just like to introduce you to these and reviewer credits, especially because this is something we use in our system, so I'm a bit more familiar with that. So I just want to tell you a bit more about what it offers you as a reviewer and how you can go about registering and creating a profile. So for reviewer credits, it allows you to track and verify your peer review activity, basically having a peer review profile. You can also earn credits and rewards for each of your peer reviews that you've completed. And I've just made a little note there to say that this will also be dependent on whether the journal does that. Certification, so review credits also allows you to pull or export a certificate with all your peer review activities, which is something that would be nice to include in your CV or any applications that you are doing. And then also very importantly, it will also add you to the reviewer credits database. So any journals that are subscribed to the reviewer credits platform and make use of it, you will be discoverable in their reviewer database. And then moving on to registration. So reviewer credits allows you to sign up and set up your profile yourself. So I've just added a link there for those of you who would perhaps like to sign up after this workshop. And once you've set up your profile, you can add or import your peer reviews there. I also just wanted to note that for most of these types of services or platforms, they are integrated with some journal systems. So for review credits, if a journal is subscribed or integrated with review credits, once you've completed a review on their platform, it will actually automatically have a question there, which will allow you to add your review directly to the reviewer credits profile if you have one set up already. Then next, I want to tell a bit more about Clarivate, the Web of Science, who does their review recognition via the Web of Science researcher profile. So this used to be, and perhaps some of you might know it, this used to be Publons, but it was taken over by Web of Science a few years ago, and it's now part of the Web of Science researcher profile. So the same as review credits, it also allows you to track and verify your peer review activity and maintain a profile of that. And then also you will be included in the Web of Science reviewer database. So any journals that are subscribed and integrated with Web of Science will be able to find you in their database when they are looking for reviewers. For this one, you're also able to register and set up a profile yourself. I've again added the link there for those of you who might be interested in registering the workshop. And once you've done that, you can add or import your reviews. And the same as reviewer credits, some journals also have this integration. So whenever you're actually submitting your review online, you will get a question looking similar to this to ask if you would like to add your review to the Web of Science researcher profile, yes or no, and then that will be automatically added to your profile if you have one set up already. And then lastly, also ORCID. So some of you might be familiar with ORCID. It is a researcher ID, which basically just gives you a verified record of a researcher, their name, surname, their works, their outputs, their affiliations, all those types of things. But actually, ORCID also can track and verify peer review activity, and that can be added to your ORCID profile. So the only difference between ORCID and the other two products is that you are not able to register peer reviews yourself on or to add it to your ORCID profile. This has to be done through the journal platform that you are doing your review on. So if the journal has integration with ORCID and you submit your peer review online, that will be automatically added to your ORCID profile. So I just want to give you a few examples of these platforms. So first, for reviewer credits, if you go to their websites, you will see they have a reviewers resources page. So you can see what type of benefits you can get, how to register and all those things. So please go and read up on that a bit. And then again, you can register yourself. So once you go to the website, there will be login and sign up details for you to follow. And here's also just an example of a reviewer profile on reviewer credits. This is Timothy. As you can see, Timothy has 186 registered peer reviews. There's an autobiography, or not autobiography, a biography for the person, and a badge. You can see this, there's a 2020 top reviewer badge for Timothy. And it will also just list some personal information, name, surname, details. The primary research topics, as you can see, this person, the expertise is in physical therapy, sports therapy, and rehabilitation, provides the institutional information, and all types of other like social, other links that may be integrated with their profile. As you can see, there's an ORCID as well. And then also just for interest, as I've mentioned, review credits allows you to export a certificate of your peer review activity. So again, this is something that you can add to your CV, or if you are applying for a job, a promotion, grant funding, anything like that, this is also something you can add there. And then some examples of the Web of Science researcher profile. If you go to the Clarivate website, you will be able to sign up or register to create a profile. They also have a Web of Science Help Center or research page, which is very comprehensive. So it explains to you exactly how you can go about setting up your researcher profile and then how to add peer reviews to that. And here's also just an example of someone who has set up such a profile. So this is Jennifer. As you can see, Jennifer has been awarded a top peer reviewer badge, and there is all the personal details, affiliations, and she also received a top reviewer in clinical medical science or clinical medicine in 2018. And then if you click on the peer review tab, it will actually show you the verified peer reviews that this person has done. And then just lastly for ORCID, again, if you go to their websites, you will see that you are able to register or to sign into your ORCID ID. And then here's just an example of a peer review profile that had some peer review entries. This person had 39 reviews on their ORCID profile. And if you click on any of these review activities, it'll give you a bit more information, for example, when the review was completed and the role of the reviewer. And then just some last thoughts. Keep your profile current with recent reviews and achievements. Secondly, ensure that all your information is accurate. Your personal details, your research interests. So if you've changed affiliations, if perhaps you've expanded on your research interests, make sure to always keep that on your profile and keep it updated. Make sure to also include this in your CV, your personal website applications. So you've gone through all the effort of creating this profile and maintaining it. So actually share it and make people aware of it. And then very lastly, just also something to note, especially if you're adding manual reviews, also make sure that you adhere to journal confidentiality policies so that you don't provide any information that could actually breach that. So that's it from my side in terms of the presentation. Before we move on to the Q&A, I just want to run a final poll to see how things have changed, or not changed, but now that you know a bit more about peer review profiles, whether it's something that you would be using and if you can see the benefits. So for those of you on YouTube, the poll just says, do you see the benefits in having a reviewer profile? Yes, no, or not sure. Okay. I'm not going to take two because we would like some time for Q&A. So I'm just going to quickly stop this. But most of you said, 93% said that you would like, or you do see the benefit in having a reviewer profile. So that's great. Thank you so much. I'm handing over to Linda again.
Thank you very much, Nadia. And I think there's no better acknowledgement of a good presentation than to have changed or have 96% of people see the benefit of a profile. So thank you for informing everyone on reviewer acknowledgement or reviewer recognition platforms. And I think certainly you've convinced everyone. So we hope that everyone who is just starting on their journey and those who are already reviewers will set those up. And it's important that we recognize and acknowledge the work of peer reviewers. There's been a few requests for the link, so maybe someone can share those in the chat at some point. But there's also a question about how do you choose which platform to register on, or can you register on all the platforms?
Well, that's a good question. I think it is quite tricky because it depends in terms of the benefits you get. You will have to go read up a bit on those products and what they offer. For example, as I mentioned, reviewer credits also have a credit and reward type of system, although that is dependent on journals, which some of the other platforms don't necessarily offer any of those types. Sorry, my video is not on. They don't offer any of those types of incentives. But then also in terms of visibility, if you want to be approached for more peer reviewers, that will be, for example, Web of Science is a very well-known product and a lot of journals use that. So in terms of visibility, perhaps that would be a better route to go. But reviewer credits is also growing in terms of the journals that subscribe to that. So it depends on what you want to achieve with it. But yes, I would say go read up on what they offer and what you see would be what most benefit you, or perhaps have multiple profiles and get benefit from them.
Thank you, Nadia. We have quite a few questions, and a lot of them relate to the compensation for peer review. And I think everyone has sort of dealt with that in their presentations. I don't think we need to go into great depth, but everyone has mentioned the problems with monetary compensation and how the role of a peer reviewer is about reciprocity. So hopefully that has cleared up those questions. There's also been a lot of questions around time for peer review, and obviously that is something that relates to compensation and recognition and reciprocity. And as an author, you don't want to wait 2 years for your review report, and that's why it's important to give back in the system. So it is something that all journal editors struggle with. It is our biggest struggle, is getting responses from reviewers. It's totally acceptable to say this is not in my field, or I don't have the time right now, but just respond and say no. Don't just ignore those invitations, please. If that's one plea I can make as a journal editor to all those new reviewers out there, please just respond, always respond. And because of these problems we have, and because of reviewer fatigue, which is what Nadia mentioned, and also the importance of diversity in our reviewer pool, which is something Susan raised, this is why we want to encourage and support new reviewers and grow our reviewer pools. And there's been quite a few questions related to how to become a peer reviewer. How do you know if you're qualified? Where do you start? Should you just wait for journals to approach you? So I'm not sure, Leslie, if you could start us off on those some suggestions there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Leslie, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? You can't hear me. Oh, you can. Okay. Okay. Yeah. As you publish, your name, because your abstract will be there, you are likely to be approached. Be careful of predatory journals, but you are likely to be approached. So the first thing is publish in the journals that you like publishing in, and you will get approached because your name goes onto the reviewer databases. You can also write to journals with your CV and your expertise and say that you are available. We had a call for this, and the call is still open at South African Journal of Science. So you are welcome to write to journals where you think that you can offer something. Also ask more senior colleagues who you work with or whose work you know, if they can mention you or if they can include you as part of reviewer team so that you can get experience and expertise. I think those are the main ones: is publish, offer yourself, and work with more experienced people. I think those are the three big ones that I can think of at the moment, Linda.
Thanks, Leslie. I think both Leslie and Susan mentioned that, as you know, if your papers are out there, then already you're in the databases, and I think also from a journal perspective, if you keep your information up to date and provide accurate keywords, then you will be found if a paper is in your area. So we at the South African Journal of Science have allowed peer review mentoring. And so if that is something you are interested in, approach someone who could act as a mentor for you, as Leslie also mentioned. Leslie, another quick one for you, hopefully quick. Do journals offer reviewing checklists?
Some journals do, some don't. So some have, some have checklists, some have formats where you have to tick things and so on. What I've included in, and I didn't go over it because it's long in my presentation, is one example of a checklist to go through. It differs from journal to journal, but always look, if you are asked as a reviewer by a particular journal, do they have a particular format and a checklist? And it varies from journal to journal. No editor would want you to be constrained by a checklist. So if there's something that you have to say that's not on the checklist, please say it. There'll always be extra space to say it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in SHS, we have a form where we ask specific questions to get specific information, and then there's an open area where you can add any comments for the authors and also any comments that you don't want the authors to see for the editors. As a double anonymous model. Susan, there's a question relating to sort of preprints. So how do preprints fit into open peer review?
Okay, so preprints, as I said, it's almost literally your raw manuscript that have not been peer reviewed by anybody that you deposit on a server, and there are specific servers which are called preprint servers, and then it's sort of, I think that's my personal problem and difficulty that I have with a preprint server. Although it serves sometimes a very good purpose because people can see your work up front before it's actually been peer reviewed. So it does allow for some other communication channels, but then it's there. So it depends. The journal, well, the platform sends out some invitations to peer review the journals, or experts will just monitor a preprint server regularly and then review that particular journal. It is a little bit confusing and a little bit frustrating to get those peer reviewers to actually review it. So that Open Research Africa one that I showed you, I've checked it again and I can see many manuscripts lying there not being peer reviewed yet. So yeah, but sometimes also what happens is that journals pick up on the preprint servers and they look what is where are there some potentials? And then they would invite that manuscript to the journal, and then it will go through a formal peer review process of that journal. Yeah, I think that's the answer I'd like to give.
Thanks. I think, as you said, it's quite confusing because I think different platforms use the same terminology for actually what are essentially different things. So, yeah, you can have a preprint on a preprint server and just get comments and use those comments for your own revision of the manuscript, and then submit the manuscript through any other model or to any other journal. Or it can then proceed to an open peer review kind of system. So I think the terminology is still a bit confusing. Sorry, I'm just checking.
Yeah, I'm also seeing that comment to say that it was difficult to withdraw the preprint from that server, and that is very important that you use reputable preprint servers. Sometimes, you know, one must decide whether you really want to withdraw it, but there should be a way on the platform where it gives the history of that manuscript to say it has been accepted by this journal or something. There should be a note somewhere. The thing is that preprints also generates its own DOIs. And that is just to keep that sort of workflow still intact. That's why they do not retract that. But there should be on that reputable server a little note area to say what has happened to it after being published there. Yeah.
And also people can cite a preprint. So
Indeed.
you can't, you know, withdraw it once someone has cited it. So it should be clearly marked if you are citing a preprint that it is a preprint,
Yes.
and what version you are citing as well. Leslie, a few questions around sort of, I think you did address this, but maybe you could just give a few specific criteria on what would be a good peer review, and then also what distinguishes between minor and major revision. How would you decide that as a reviewer?
Okay, a good peer review provides evidence for its opinions, is constructive and clearly written, and it will really make the field go forward, not just the author, but will be good for the field, whether that's a reject or accept or revisions. And I think there was more detail in the talk that I gave. The borderland between minor and major revisions is murky. One person's minor is another person's major. Minor revisions for me is when the basic argument is good, the methods are good, the relationship between the introduction, the question, the methods, the results, and the conclusions are all there, but there are some small things. So the person neglected to cite a couple of researchers that just needed to be put in, or there's a limitation that hasn't been mentioned. So that's minor. The major revisions is when you start to really say, well, the data that you have presented cannot really answer your research question. The analysis is not correct. You're unaware of a large amount of the literature. So that means a lot of work has to be done in rethinking and reworking the paper. But it's a kind of soft borderland, and often the reviewers will have one view, but again, it's for the editor in terms of that journal to decide really what is minor and what is major. Yeah. Thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Leslie. I think we have time for only one more question, but it's quite an important one, and that relates to should you only review for accredited journals, and how do you know that the journal you're reviewing for is not predatory or is a reputable journal?
Yeah.
I'm not sure who would like to take that question.
Well, this is Susanne's field of expertise on predatory journals. She chaired the meeting, so
Yes, I think as a rule of thumb, is maybe look at accredited journal. So you must just decide what is an accredited journal. So it's a journal that has been indexed by the Web of Science, Scopus, TOHA, Zelo South Africa. Those are the indexes which are, according to the research output policy in South Africa, being viewed as accredited journals. So then you've got a wealth of journals. I think it's now already something like 34,000 journals. So, I mean, it's really broad and has a nice width. So then at least you are, well, 60-70% assured that you are not reviewing a predatory journal, because it is problematic. Once your name is associated with a predatory journal, it's a tough thing on if you start citing your reviews, etc. And please don't get involved in that. Take that as a very broad guideline. The accredited indexes as such. Thank you, Linda.
I think until you're familiar with the journal, then it's best to use those that are on lists. Yeah. So I think that's unfortunately all we have time for today. So I just want to thank all our presenters for their very informative presentations, and for all the participants for joining us today. If we did not get to your question, or if you still have questions around peer review, we do have a monthly journal forum that is about all things journal writing and peer reviewing. So if you are interested, you can send me an email and we can include you on the mailing list for that journal forum. Otherwise, please do give us your comments on this workshop. My colleagues have shared the link. Nani has shared the link in the chat. We would appreciate your feedback on this workshop. And thank you once again for your time today to the participants and the presenters for a fabulous workshop.
Thank you, Linda, for your excellent sharing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.